my reason for being here and writing this book that I did is because Dogen is tough. Uh, I sometimes compare him to James Joyce. He's like Ulysses. He's a book you pick up, and I have to confess that I struggled with Dogen for years. I think many people do, even experienced people. So I wrote a book as a basic, how to say, gateway into Dogen, hoping that people who may be frustrated sometimes with his writing style will kind of look at it in a different way, and more than look at it, hear it in a different way. Because here's how I've taken to expressing what Dogen was doing. Dogen is not always going for just the meaning, it's the sound, it's the expression. And the way he did that is, well, something like talking about Picasso. To bring these teachings to life, he did to words and traditional teachings what Picasso did to a table. You know, Picasso put a leg on top and put the bottom where the side, and it brought new light and new perspective on things. But at the same time, there's a basis there, a teaching. And another way to hear Dogen is like a jazz musician. Now, before I get into this, I want to say that there are many approaches to Dogen. Some people throw the book down in frustration. Other writers, there's so many beautiful books on Dogen. Anything by Okamura Roshi, highly recommended. Uchiyama Roshi, highly recommended. Shinshu Roberts on Uji, so beautiful. But some other writers just analyze him, trying to understand intellectually every sentence that Dogen wrote, as if every sentence meant something. And I think that's kind of a mistake. Because for Dogen, it was the expression and the sound. And the way I get to this is by comparing him to the great jazzman Coltrane, John Coltrane. And what Coltrane did to some very beautiful, but very, shall we say, plain or standard teachings, to bring them to life. And the example I give, and I'd like you, when we're done here today, go to YouTube and look for Coltrane's presentation of My Favorite Things. You know that beautiful Julie Andrews song from The Sound of Music, where she's singing about, I got to do this because I'm going to subject you to my voice. Raindrops and roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, da 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 da. These are a few of my favorite things. I should have said everybody join in. Well, Coltrane takes that and he starts playing with the sound and bending it and syncopating and putting this piece over here and that piece over there. And then he flies off and he flies back. And it's still my favorite things, but now it's Coltrane's favorite things, man. And it would be a mistake to say, what does Coltrane mean by that note or just that phrase? What's the meaning there? What's the idea he's trying to convey? Not like that, man. It's the feeling. It's the feeling he's flying with, he's bringing to life, he's creating a new animal like that. But at the same time, it would be a mistake to go the other direction and say, there's nothing there but sound. No, the old standard teaching, the old standard, my favorite things, is still in there and it pops up every once in a while. You can hear the theme. And it's the same with Dogen. For all his wild sound, Dogen was still a very traditional Orthodox Mahayana and Zen teacher, trained in the Tendai school. So some very standard teachings are still in there. I think for all his wild feeling, where we don't say, what did he mean? But it was what he felt. He meant what he felt about these teachings and he was bringing them to life. the traditional Mahayana and Zen teachings are still in there, so we cannot forget those. And the example I'd like to present to you today is from my book, but from Master Dogen's writings, where he takes uh, a traditional koan and then he flies with it and he kicks it into high gear. But the koan, the message there is still embedded in every word of Dogen, every letter. And I'm going to say this, and I'm glad Shishin Wick is here, because I actually think this koan and Dogen's writing can be understood and explained. So I'm going to try to do that, where he's starting from, because I think Dogen is actually trying to express that teaching. But of course, we Zen folks say that even though some of these koans can be understood quite well up here, that's where we don't stop there. It's a little bit like you have to actually play the music. We sit zazen, we do our practice to bring this to life. So it never stops as an intellectual idea, of course. Please don't mistake me on that. But this teaching by Dogen has two ideas in it, at least, that I'd like to focus on. The first one is the deep interconnection, interpenetration, and idea of everything and then some, every person, place, and event, past, future, all sweeping in and being each other. And that includes you. All contained here. And the only way I can describe this is that, we all go through life and we feel so separate. And I'm not you, and you're not me, and yesterday and today were what they are. And I'm looking out the window here and there's a mountain and it's fall. I'm seeing a leaf fluttering through the tree. But for the Mahayana Buddhist and Zen fellow like Dogen, everything is everything. And everything is all of it. The example I give is I have a teacup here, and of course the teacup is not me, and it's not Doshin, and it's not the mountain. But for the Zen fellow and for Dogen, the mountain gets pulled and sucked and is fully contained right in this teacup. And turn the teacup over, it is the mountain, and the leaf, and you, and everything you do, and yesterday, and tomorrow, and what's happening on the greatest planet, and the smallest thing, the smallest grain of sand, all here. And when we sit zazen, it's all there too. That's in Master Dogen's writing. And the image I used for the book, I called the Zen Master's Dance, was that Dogen saw this wholeness, this activity that of the whole of reality that we sometimes call emptiness, as like a great dance. And a dance is everything's moving and interacting, and you, of course, you are dancers, and I am dancers, and the mountain is a dancer, that leaf is a dancer, the teacup is dancing, yesterday is a dancer, tomorrow is a dancer, dancers coming together, dancers pulling apart, dancing inside you, in every cell and every atom is spinning and dancing, coming together for a time and then going away. And why is this important for us? Well, because we feel so separate. Suddenly our life, we're born, hey, how did I get here? What am I doing? I seem to be on a stage. And we spin around for a time, and then one day we pop off. Where do we go? But when we realize that it's all this great dance coming together in all of us, in all things, and for a time it spun us up as me. But I'm a dancer, and you're a dancer. And then when our time is done, off stage. But if the dance was before our time, and the dance is during our time, and the dance is after our time, and we're just the dance, where do we go? And the other reason I like the image of a dance is, again, like emptiness. We say emptiness is empty. Emptiness is not a thing, and neither is the dance. The dance is, I'm used the word a dance, but it's an action that all things are doing. Actions and actions and actions and activities. You cannot nail it down. You cannot stick it to a wall. You cannot put it in a jar. But yet it's who we are. So that's why I use that image. But right now, let's get into Master Dogen's writing, and you'll see how he expressed this deep interconnection of all things. And the other topic he covers in here is the rightness of all things, even when they go wrong. You're going to hear that too. This is also, I think, a beautiful Zen master's vision, but there's something right about the whole dance. There's something right, even though in this world, in our lives, in this society, I'm reading the news today, so many things go wrong. Even when they go wrong, overall there's a right. And they're rightly going wrong, as Dogen might say here. But despite that, it's our job as dancers to do our best to dance right. I'll talk about that a little more later, but that's in here too. Okay, so let's get down to the basic koan. Yaoshan asked Mazu, I have digested all the teachings and read all the scriptures, but what was the ancestral master Bodhidharma's intention in coming to China from India in the West? We mean it, first off, the most ordinary thing. Well, why did he bother to come to China and bring the Zen teachings that have now come to us? But it actually has a greater meaning too for us, which is, what's it all about? What is Zen all about? What is reality all about? What's it all about? What's going on here, man? So Mazu responded, sometimes I make him, I Mazu, sometimes I make him, Bodhidharma, raise an eyebrow or wink an eye. And sometimes I do not make him raise an eyebrow and wink an eye. And there's something here, if I may dare to explain a koan, which again, don't just get caught here, is that when you wink an eye, it is the mountain winking an eye. And when you raise an eyebrow, it is what happened on a distant star and in every cell of every living creature, winking an eye, raising an eyebrow. And when I raise an eyebrow, it is Bodhidharma's raising an eyebrow. And when you wink, it is the Buddha's winking, not only the Buddha who sat under a tree, but the big Buddha. And there's something that everything pours into everything, and we are all faces of each other and the one face. So that's how when I raise an eyebrow to wink, you are the one who is blinking like that. Okay? So anyway, and then Mazu goes on, and sometimes to make him raise an eyebrow or wink an eye is what's right, and sometimes to make him raise an eyebrow or wink an eye is not right. Now here's where Dogen starts with his jazz of the deep interconnection of all things and this right and wrong. Now, the deep interconnection of all things, again, is a traditional image in Buddhism. I think one of the most famous teachings, everyone knows Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching about the piece of paper, that the piece of paper contains the rain and the sun that made the tree, and the lumberjack who chopped the tree is all in the paper. And it's a very beautiful teaching. And it's very quiet and simple and still. What Dogen does is take it and, man, explodes it, brings it out into flowering by saying, if it was Dogen, he'd say something like, oh yeah, the paper is raining the sunshine. The lumberjack is shining and is made of paper, like that. Just using that wordplay brings that teaching about the lumberjack, the rain, the sun, and the paper into life. You fold up the paper and out springs an origami lumberjack, like that. Okay, so that's Dogen's game with words. And here's what he does here. Again, don't try to understand. Let this wash through you, because it's jazz, man. Dogen says, his eyebrows and eyes are the mountains and oceans. because the mountains and oceans are his eyebrows and eyes. In his make him raise an eyebrow, he is to see the mountains, and make him wink is to understand the seas. I like this use of seas here because it's in English, but it gives a little hint of some other wordplay that Dogen loved. Dogen loved to take words and just homonyms and take the Chinese characters and with different pronunciations. Well, here you have see, I see, and an eye as winking, and the sea, the ocean, right? So he's playing a little on that, maybe, I'm seeing the sea, and the sea is the seeing of the sea is seeing. Si, senor, like that. Okay, so that's just an example of the. Why would he do that? What's the meaning there? No, it's fun. He was playing with the sound, that kind of things. And of course, this is English, and he would do it in Japanese, but he would do that a lot. The right answer, truly, is his. And he is actualized by having him raise the eyebrows and wink. But neither does not right mean not having him raise the eyebrows and wink. And to not have him raise the eyebrows and wink does not mean not right. Huh? What? All are equally the being time. Now, this is from Master Dogen Shobo Genzo Uji, which means being time. And that point is not hard to understand for us modern people because, you see, Dogen was saying that the mountain has its own time and being. And you have your own time and being. And every grain of sand or cell within you has its own time and being, which are all intermingling as all times and beings. And it's kind of like what Einstein said about you're in your time and I'm in my time, but yet there's some great field of something holding it all together and intermingling and flowing. So our modern people, we can kind of get this, that everything's in its own time. And if you go to the dancer in the dance, the one dancer on stage is dancing her rhythm and place. And the other dancer, all the other dancers are dancing each in their rhythm and place. And they all intermingle and intermerge as somehow all these different being times flowing and coming together. And there's some overriding maybe time or timeless to it all. Sure. That's kind of maybe what Dogen's getting in here. So he says, the mountains are time and the oceans are time. Without time, the mountains and oceans could never exist. I'm sorry to keep interrupting Dogen, but if we had not had billions of years and all that happened, this planet, there would be no mountains and oceans or you and me. And the other way is true too. If there wasn't mountains and oceans and you and me, nothing would have happened, and all the other things too. And we give life to this would be an empty stage, an empty universe without all of us. So Master Dogen continues there. Without time, the mountains and oceans could never exist. So we should not deny that time is existing in the mountains and oceans right here and now. And if time were eliminated, the mountains and oceans would be eliminated. But as time is not annihilated, thus are the mountains and oceans preserved. This being so, and this is where he brings it down to Buddha sitting under the tree seeing a morning star, which, by the way, is your and my Zazen too, when we sit Zazen. So Buddha, after all his searching and struggles, sat under a tree and he saw the morning star and he saw the shining, and perhaps he realized that the shining was his own shining, all things shining. Everything that ever was is just the star and the shining in him and you and me, like that, right? So Dogen brings it all, it's all into the teacup, like that. So, this being so, the morning star appears, the Buddha Tathagata appears, the eye appears, and raising up a flower appears. Each is time, and were there no time, it could not be thus. Now, if you allow me, I'm going to my simple explanation from my book, The Zen Master's Dance, of how to approach all this. What is Dogen's sound? Okay, here goes. Dogen plays on a cherished koan about a Zen master who inquires into the real meaning of Zen, which somehow eluded him in all his studies of texts and theory. He asks why Bodhidharma bothered to come to China. In other words, what is Zen all about? The traditional response about eyebrows and such can have a direct meaning. Bodhidharma did nothing special. Traveling to China was the most natural of things, like winking. If he had not done it, something else would have taken place. I like to just say here too, to interrupt myself, that for Zen folks, the most simple things are miracles in this dance. It's not just a matter of walking on water or lights, golden lights coming out of our head. To be here after all that it took of all of space and time and history to just be able to scratch your nose or wink or raise an eyebrow, it's a miracle. Do you know that all the biology and chemistry and history involved just for that? But anyway, it's a miracle, the simplest of things, you see. So I continue here. Our own simple acts and winking and looking can also be known as the Buddha, looking and winking. Not only the Buddha under the tree, we say the big Buddha, and don't even have to give it a name, but it's all, when you're winking, it's all this winking. So our looking and winking can be known as the Buddha looking and winking, Bodhidharma looking and winking, the whole universe looking and winking. Not doing so is still the ancient master's eyes and eyebrows not doing so, the whole universe not doing so. It is not a matter of our having to be aware of such fact all the time. As a matter of fact, we're not. The thing is, in our ignorance, we're usually not aware of it. I don't make breakfast for my kids and say, oh, now it's the universe making breakfast for my kids. And I don't drive my car and say, oh, it's all time and space that has come down to me driving this car. Actually, from this practice, sometimes I do. And every once in a while, I'm making breakfast for my son and I say, oh, this is all of reality, making all of reality for my son, who's also all of it. It's all the dance, you see. And driving your car is the universe driving your car, because, well, you get it now. So our face, even when we're not aware, our face is still shared with the ancient master, although we do not feel so in a particular moment. Even then, it is still Bodhidharma's eyes and eyebrows, as our eyes and eyebrows. Now, Dogen plays his Zen jazz to take this one step further. His eyes and eyebrows are the mountains and seas, and the whole world, and all within it. Winking the eye is an ocean winking, and raising an eyebrow is raising a mountain. There may be right and wrong times to do or not to do an action, but ultimately, there are no wrong times. Again, another digression. Somehow for Zen folks, there's something right about the whole great catastrophe, the whole wonderful dance or universe, or some people may call it Buddha, God, don't say anything. I think Einstein, when he lived during Nazi Germany, but yet he heard some harmony in the equations and felt that there must be some great beauty to it all, even though down here it's a world of beauty and ugliness and right and wrong. And I think it was true for Dogen too. So Dogen is saying there's some overriding right, even when this world is sometimes right and sometimes, like today, such a mess. And yet, said Dogen, we are dancers. Our job is to dance as gracefully and as right as we can. What's right dancing? What's wrong dancing? Wrong dancing is when we're filled with greed, anger, and ignorance. And right dancing for Dogen is when we dance with generosity and nonviolence and wholeness beyond division, right? So Dogen is saying there's some overriding right, but we can't stop there. We dancers have to dance right. And I'm going to give you a story from my own sister, who actually is the inspiration for this book, because at the age of 80, she's still teaching dance. She was a dancer for the last almost 70 years. And I asked my sister when she was on stage, I said, what happens when things go wrong? Like your partner drops you and you fall on your keister or you trip. And she says, oh, you make it part of the dance as if it was supposed to be, and you move from there. Of course, you try not to fall, you try not to trip. That's what Master Dogen's telling us. But when we do trip, it's the dance itself, as if it was all meant to be, and you keep going. And that, I think, is the message here, that even when it's wrong, and even though we try to not do wrong, when it goes wrong, it's still in the overall dance somehow right. So Dogen says, if I can find the right place. Here it is. There may be right and wrong times to do or not do an action, but ultimately there are no wrong times, for each time is its own time. And even not doing is the right time of not doing. And wrongdoing is the right doing of a wrongdoing. That's something that can only mean something to a Zen person. It's wrong. We don't want it to be wrong. We've done wrong. But yet, it's the right doing of a wrongdoing. Nonetheless, let's not do wrong. So, nonetheless, Dogen would often remind us to do what's right and avoid doing wrong, for doing so helps clarify the heart and mind. Dogen says that eye and eyebrow, mountain and sea are all time. It is obvious that without time, none of these could have evolved or come to be. Thus, he states, without time, the mountains and oceans could never exist. But equally, without the motion of their and our evolving, without our living, time would have been frozen and never flowed. Thus, time needs us and is us as much as we need time and our time. The dance needs dancers to bring it to life, but the dancers are not dancers without the dance. Why do we even think they're two? You know, when you look at a dance, my images, and you see individual dancers on stage spinning and spinning, and you pull back and you pull back and you pull back. The dancers are still there, of course, right? But they vanish. And all there is now the swirling, the motion. And you get close again, and here the dancers reappear. There always, but not there. Like that. But if it was out without the dancers dancing, it would all be stagnant. It would all be dead. So it is existing as you and me too, here and now. And so it is for all moments in time, such as when the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree saw the morning star and realized the truth. It is said that after many long years of striving and pushing himself to the extremes of body and mind, the Buddha finally eased his heart under the tree. Seeing the clear light of the morning star in the sky, he said, I and all sentient beings on earth together are enlightened at once. I and the star and the shining in the tree are dancing. You are dancing. It's the dance. We are all just dancing. And if I can give one last story about my sister here. Because the happy times and the sad times are all in the dance too. The things we long for or regret from yesterday, the things we fear or dream for tomorrow, all in this dance. My sister's story is that she was pregnant and she lost a child in a miscarriage. And she couldn't dance while she was pregnant. So right after losing the baby, a couple of weeks later, she was able to get back on the stage and she started to dance. and she hadn't dealt with, I guess, what had happened. And in the middle of this dance performance, suddenly the tears came in her eyes, and the child and death all was there, and somehow a joy. And she's dancing, and she poured herself into the dance, and she realized that losing the child and the pregnancy and what comes and goes and appears and vanishes, and it's all in the dance, and it's all somehow just our dancing. And she danced on like that. Maybe something like that is what was realized. And our whole life just pours in and out of this whatever this is. All are enlightened at once, for all are one in this being time. Okay, well, enough words by me. So Dogen closes, and he reminds us the great story that even for all his thousands of words and more words that I've poured on here, the ultimate is, of course, this dance beyond words. You don't listen to somebody on Zoom tell you how to dance. Okay, you don't watch a YouTube video how to dance. You shake your thing, you get in dance, and you start moving, and you bring this to life, in your space and time. You are a dancer on stage. Don't listen to me. Dance with grace and beauty and harm and nonviolence. Dance beautifully and realize and pour all your fears and all your hopes into the dance, and just dance, and let me shut up now, because he now tells the story of holding up the flower. You know that, and Mahakashapa smile. That is in the dance too. And when we sit still in Zazen, not moving, that unmovingness is the first step of the dance, the step in which we don't move, but all of it flows in and out of our just sitting there. So let me close with this. Years later, when the Buddha held up a flower and winked, Mahakashapa saw and understood with a smile. In that famous story, the Buddha silently held up a single flower as the wordless expression of the truth. And his disciple, Mahakashapa, understood and also expressed this silently. It's a silent dance, you know. So that's all.